Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. This hour, we'll talk about what this city means to those whose roots maintained this land long before Europeans arrived. We'll explore the importance of Concert of Colors neighborhood programs and the importance of showcasing diverse musical acts, especially those often referenced in past tense. But first, this weekend, Native culture and art are coming together in a powerful way in Waawiyaatanong, what people now call Detroit. The Curved Shores concert is set to take over Spotlight Detroit this weekend, bringing together an exciting lineup of Native American musicians and storytellers. It's part of the larger Concert of Colors neighborhood programs, an effort to bring global sounds and meaningful conversations directly into Detroit's neighborhoods. So, what does it mean to create space like this, to celebrate Native artistry in a city like Detroit, and to bring the community together through sound? Charles Ezra Ferrell is on the advisory board for Concert of Colors, which WDET is a proud media partner for, and SouFy is a Southwest Detroit native and Native American hip-hop artist. And when he's not on stage performing, he'll be helping bring this entire experience to life as co-founder of Vibes with the Tribes, the producers of the showcase. They're both in studio now to talk more about the Curved Shores concert and the Concert of Colors neighborhood programming. SouFy and Charles, thank you so much for joining me on the Metro.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So, SouFy, beginning with you, let's start off with some of the artists who will be performing this weekend at Spotlight. First up, we have Rose Thornberry out of Detroit. Talk a little bit about Rose.
Yeah, for sure. So let me give you my three traditional greetings here.
Yes.
Three traditional Detroit greetings. So, Anin, Bonjour, what up, though? How's everybody doing? This weekend, the Curved Shores concert, partnership with Concert of Colors, neighborhood programs, a good friend of ours at Vibes with the Tribes. And we always bring Native artists out, but we always make sure that we have our hometown people highlighted as well. And Rose Thornberry is one of those people. Rose Thornberry is a city native. She's a person that has grew up here in Detroit, reconnecting back to her roots. Me being a little bit maybe farther down my path in the culture, that's something that sometimes I can help folks out that don't necessarily have that connection. But it's as far as her artistry and music, she's definitely one of the new up and coming heavy hitters, but she's been putting work in for quite some time in the city. And she switched it up a little bit ago on one of her releases and had like a little country swing to it, and a song called Talk Better. And then her latest release was a release called How. So, and she just had her album release party. She had a really cool party, really cool release for her new project and her new music. And she literally gave everybody her project on old iPod shuffles. So it was pretty cool. Yeah, she's
love that.
She's awesome.
I lost my iPod shuffle, as soon as I got it pretty much. But, I just love to hear that that's coming back, that you can hold that music in your hand. But I do want to get a clip of How, actually. So here's How by Rose Thornberry.
Awesome.
See you again makes me uneasy. Got all these memories coming back. Feels like I'm under attack. I'd rather you not see me. How do I breathe? How do I speak to somebody that I used to know? What do you see? A figment of imagination or reality? How do you make me feel?
So listening to I know, Charles, you're the same way. When I was listening to all of these artists, but I listened to Rose and I just thought to myself, this is something that's missing from my playlist. This is exactly the vibe that I listen to often. So she's been instantly added to my playlist. But that's Rose Thornberry with her latest release, How. Absolutely love that. And now we have Natani Means. You've worked with Natani yourself, actually. Talk briefly about collabing with Natani before we get to one of his tracks.
Yeah, I released a song, I believe, about 2 years ago now, called Futuristic Indians. And that's featuring Natani Means and another heavy hitter from out there in Albuquerque named Defy. So it was great. I've known Natani since 2016. I met him in Standing Rock. We did a benefit concert, Mini Wachoni benefit concert out in Standing Rock at the Prairie Nights Casino. It was to raise money for what was going on in Standing Rock at the time. So that's how I met Natani, and I think we've been wanting to work together for quite some time. In like the native hip hop world, everybody at least knows about each other or knows each other in some type of way. So when I did that song, it was me and Defy, and I had a verse left, and I was like, well, maybe it's time to get Natani on something, and I sent it to him, and he sent it back.
I love that. We have pulled a little clip of Dreams from Natani, actually. Awesome. So here's that clip.
Look, in what direction do I find some protection? Addicted to the fast, like late nights collapse, like relationships on thin ice. Yeah, I've been nice, trying to find the good while my exes say I'm toxic. I wanna be left alone, man, these people get obnoxious. Always in my ear, talking like I really want this. Late night seductions, early morning repercussions. My mama told me that she hates to see my self-destruction. If only she knew the half of it. I'm losing my spirit, drunk and incoherent, cause I ain't wanna hear it. Numbing the vice, but vice is being explicit. They told me it wasn't possible back when I was 16. Later kid from the Reds, always had big dreams with a chip on my shoulder, the size of Arizona. Sitting in my room, had Tupac up on my posters. I'm looking at the view from the bottom, it's getting closer.
So when I heard this track, the first thing I thought about was just the lyrics and how deep it was and the message that was being presented there. And, him being honest and being extremely honest on that track. Oftentimes when we think about Native artists, we think of just one particular sound or one particular image. Mm-hmm. How does Natani and even, the song that we heard previously from Rose Thornberry help break up that idea?
It's kind of just like us figuring out and deciding, like, are we Native artists? Are we artists that are Native?
Yeah.
So we get put in a box, not just with music, but just culturally and traditionally. Everybody says Native Americans. Well, just in the United States, not even including Canada, there's over 500 different tribes. That's 500 different languages. That's, different ways that we pray. That's our communities are ran different ways. And then we have location. So we have natives that grow up on the reservation, and that's their struggle, and they could speak on that. And we have natives that grew up in the city, surrounded by concrete. And some of us, depending on which city you grew up in, are totally disconnected, or we have that urban programming. So we still have that in our life. And luckily that was me. I still had that in my life to keep me connected throughout growing up. But I think that's something that me and another artist on the venue, one of my good friends, Stuart James, we talk about that a lot, is not getting put in a box. Like, we can always make certain songs that express who we are. Just like, even scatter like certain things through certain songs, and then some songs might be directly about the culture. But for some of us, just like Natani said in the song, he grew up with Tupac posters on his wall. So, the same things that inspired most other hip-hop artists are the same things that inspired Native hip-hop artists. Like, if you bring a Native hip-hop artist and ask him who his inspiration is, I'm pretty sure he's not going to tell you like some other Native hip-hop artist, because they were not around. Yeah. They weren't for us to learn from. We were learning from Tupac, Nas, Eminem, whatever you was into. That's what we came up on. And I think it just depends on who the artist is. Sometimes that fits, that they can use the culture and everything. Sometimes it's corny. So you gotta like really know your line and where to draw it. Because we're representing our culture in a way. So if you're really gonna go all out and make the culture about you as an artist and your song, you better be living that way too, and not just making it for music.
And now we're going to get into that a little bit later on for sure, because I definitely want to talk a little bit more about just your upbringing and what Detroit means to you in general. But I do want to bring Charles into this conversation. This year's lineup highlights musicians from across the board. I'm talking about the entire year for the program, including partnering with Vibes with the Tribes, which we'll be discussing a little bit more today. But how did you approach representing so many different cultures and traditions in one cohesive series?
Thank you for that question, Tia. What's really important is to understand the genesis of the Concert of Colors, founded by Ishmael Ahmed, a deep mentor, friend, and visionary, institution builder par excellence, who understood that, as Raymond had mentioned, you have different aspects of people, different variations of cultures, but one of the connected unifiers is the universal language of music, food, and how can we build coalitions and bring people together. It's about respecting other cultures. So in the case of Raymond, it's about empowerment to allow culture to have their own voice. So I'm not there to top-down curate, but to provide a platform, resources, funding, so that the different voices of Detroit can be heard. But the overarching aspect of the work that we do is spiritual. Underneath the undercurrent of Detroit River, with undercurrents, even as he talked about when we heard that music. Did you hear Detroit?
Yeah.
Did you hear the influence of culture like Tupac? And, so it's a braiding, intermingling of genres as well.
Charles, I love that you brought that up, because one of the things that I was going to speak to, and I am going to speak to SouFy about, is his music sounds so Detroit as well. When I heard some of his rhymes, I said, that sounds like Detroit in a way that I didn't expect it to sound. So definitely want to dig into that. But Charles, let's talk about Ishmael for a moment. Ishmael Ahmed, the founder of Concert of Colors. He's so much more than the founder of Concert of Colors, of course. But what does it mean, or what did it mean, to bring the programs back to the neighborhoods in a way that we all have?
Well, what it represented fundamentally is transformation.
Yeah.
And the Concert of Colors having existed for 33 years, finding various homes, but as it progressed, first started in the neighborhoods in Shane Park, but then find itself being kind of anchored in Midtown. When you look at the demographics and the heat maps of Detroit that thirst for arts and culture, that it was important to expand the reach of the Concert of Colors by anchoring, as we do, partnering with neighborhoods, community-based organizations. Actually, in each entity, we're working with a neighborhood organization, just as we did recently with the Economic Community Network, or DABO in Detroit. So we provide some bit of guidance around program development so that we can make certain when the program is on point. But at the same time, we are building neighborhood relationships, not just by putting the program, but by working with these community-based partners, nonprofits, et cetera. That's one, but we are really happy to have our funders this year always partnering with WDTE, that does a great job promoting our program 2 weeks ahead. We partner with Mark Lane, our marketing department, that puts together our posters and social media. Detroit PBS, and this year will be recording, as they will this upcoming Saturdays, all of those who can come out, pack in. Because that gives life after the program to extend throughout the state, which are state funded, but Gilbert Family Foundation, Kresge, and this year we're fortunate, based on the visionary work of Ishmael, that we had a knock on our door from the Smithsonian.
That's amazing.
Who said, we're not working in D.C. on folk life. We want to do what we like what you're doing with neighborhood programs. We're leaving D.C. and coming out around the nation. We're going to come out and work with you. And we have 2 co-curated programs, the Mexican Town, June 27th, a phenomenal program, and our Arab American program in November, which are co-curated. But, those partners are excited about the transformational work that occurs when you come out to the program and see different people coming into venues who haven't been there before. Exactly. What really undergirds the Concert of Colors in many ways is our Culture Exchange Network. We have an organization of about 60 diverse organizations that meets once a quarter at major venues. Our most recent one was at the Charles Wright, or the Henry Ford or the Detroit Zoological Society. And at those meetings, there's an opportunity for each culture to do a bit of their history. We want to understand each other. Why? So when there's a challenge, we can be there. It's around coalition building. That's how you offset anti-democratic nuances that's happened, is that we have to build community. And one of the best way to do that is through arts and culture. So that's part of Ishmael's vision. Just to talk a little bit more about him, in terms of being a multifaceted individual who helped found the Arab American Museum, who helped found Access, who was Director of Human Services for 2 governors and helped those in need. He founded the Council of Colors, provost on the National Council of Arts. I mean, many honorary degrees, but yet amazingly humble. Not to mention this island Earth. As you can see from the poster that we're gifting to WDET today, that Ishmael had, signed by all the artists, it has a turtle, right, representing Turtle Island.
Where we sit right now.
Right, which is an understanding of first people. We cannot tell this, this is like the culture of Detroit, our music. That's an impulse of why is this a spiritual vortex? Why did Motown emerge here? Why did all the jazz artists want to come here? Why was Dilla, Amp Fiddler, Aretha Franklin? I mean, just think about it. Why here? When you have people fleeing from apartheid, coming north to work in the auto plants, having some really expendable income. I don't want to talk too long, but the Council of Colors is a really, for me, and for all of us who work on it, a really important way of expressing the connected tissue throughout Detroit. And so we started in February, we're ending in November. Each program is unique and rooted in unique culture. So I'm excited.
I have so much to get to. We're going to get to some more after this break. I'm Tia Graham. We're talking about the Curved Shores Concert, a Native Artist Showcase. Our guests are Charles Ezra Ferrell, Advisory Board Member for the Concert of Colors, and SouFy, a Native American hip-hop artist and co-founder of Vibes with the Tribes. This weekend, Vibes with the Tribes will showcase 6 Native artists at Spotlight in Detroit as part of the series. When we return, we'll learn a little bit more about what Detroit means to SouFy and the importance of the Concert of Colors neighborhood programs. You all stay right there. This is The Metro. This is The Metro. I'm Tia Graham. We're talking about the Curved Shores Concert, a Native Artist Showcase at Spotlight Detroit this Saturday. My guests are Charles Ezra Ferrell, Director of Concert of Colors Neighborhood Programs, and SouFy, a Native American hip-hop artist and co-founder of Vibes with the Tribes. Now, SouFy, I want to talk a little bit about Vibes with the Tribes. What is it for those who are unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, so I'm the owner, director of Vibes with the Tribes. It's been going since 2020. It started virtually. Right during the pandemic is when it was when like we were okay, and then they were like, go back in the house. Yeah. You're okay. Go back in the house. So it was like during that time. So right when it was about to happen, it was one of the go back in the house, don't touch nobody orders. So we had to do it virtually. And then the first in-person event was 2021, and that was done in Southwest Detroit, right across from L Club.
Yeah.
That's when we had partnered with the community collective, We Are Culture Creators, and did our first in-person one. And that was done in a community lot that community members in Southwest Detroit had came together and bought up the lot. So it didn't pretty much get bought up, taken, and gentrified. So they bought it so they can keep it in the community. And we turned the alley in that event to the vendor alley. We literally went in the neighborhood to the place that sells rocks and mulch and all that. And we put in a big order and had the truck come dump rocks in the alley, pulled all the vendors in there, and we kind of just pulled it off. and it's been going ever since then.
Wow.
You know, and last year it was probably our biggest year as far as artists we brought out in the venue, being at the Russell Industrial Center. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and it was just something that I was inspired by my childhood growing up here in the city and wanting to bring things to the community.
And, you know, I definitely want to get right into that, actually. I want to play a clip of you reciting a poem earlier this year. I pulled it off of YouTube. So here it is right here.
Anin, Bonjour, what up, though? The traditional greetings of the place we call the D, the 313. Motor City, Motown, Berry Gordy, the Supremes, birthplace of the Model T, home of the Lions, Tigers, Pistons, Red Wings, fries with chili cheese. But this is Waawiyaatanong, where the curved shores meet, where the river bends. Stories of the red ghetto echo. I wonder if Ogie Mob Wandiak would love techno. This is Waawiyaatanong. Windsor is Waawiyaatanong. No borders on stolen land. No borders on stolen land. I hop on the back of the May, the sturgeon, and ride down the river to Amjanong, Bequejanong, Detroit. We are the third sacred stopping spot. Tobacco offerings on top of the concrete because the earth is underneath. Can't speak of the D without the fires of three. Ojibwe, Odawa, Bodewad, me. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. Song and dance comes back to Hart Plaza, but the land, it never forgets. The land, it never forgets. It never forgets. Miigwech.
Hey.
Miigwech.
Just had a fist pump just happening here with Charles and SouFy. But Ode to Waawiyaatanong. When I heard that, I honestly, the feeling that just rushed over me, because I felt so proud to be from Detroit when I heard it. And then when you hear the addition of the history here, when he's talking about the river, when he's talking about the three fires that continues to burn right here in the city of Detroit, Waawiyaatanong, you know, what does it mean to you being in Detroit, but also being native in Detroit?
Just kind of like, you know, reclaiming. And, you know, me being a lifelong Detroiter here, you know, I love my city. I love where I'm from, and I love who I am as a Anishinaabe and an Anishinaabe man. And, you know, even though for us, it's almost like we see the city from a different lens. Mm-hmm. So, like, say, for example, when I go to Belle Isle, which Wanna be easy, like Swan Island, when we go to Belle Isle, like, you know, of course, I got two versions of Belle Isle for me. I got to go in there, having a good time, barbecue. It's Belle Isle, it's Detroit. But also when I go there, I feel like we always look at what it was when it was just us here. So, you know, like there's certain things, like every time I'm at my Belle Isle, there's another island out there called Pesh Island. And that's where Pontiac went to go do his fast. That's where he would fast when he needed to get, you know, visions or answers. And, you know, people can go and look at that island all day. And I can't help but to think sometimes when I'm on Belle Isle, like, when's the last time there was ceremony here? When was there a lodge here? I know there was one here. How long ago was it? You know, so there's a lot of things like that I think about. So it's like, you know, even when I tell my other natives in the city, because for us when we pray, we don't need a church or anything like that. We just we pray with tobacco and asema. You know, asema is tobacco, and you know, for the natives that are in the city, I always tell them, like, don't feel no type of way if you got to put that out on the concrete and you can't get to the water or anything like that. Underneath the concrete is the earth. Before all this stuff was built here, you know, like the land knows what you're doing. The land knows that you're putting that tobacco down. It's all right. So for me, it's just like, I mean, even not too far from here, right down Cass on Park and Temple, the big red apartment building that I'm sure somebody's probably bought up and going to turn into like $3,000 a month condos because it's right by Little Caesars Arena.
Yeah.
That's where my grandmother first came and lived here in 1967 when it was called, known as the Red Ghetto.
And what is the Red Ghetto for people who are unfamiliar with it?
The Red Ghetto was the Cass Corridor section of Detroit. It was, I want to say, I could be a little off, but I want to say it's from like the 50s to the 70s, where a lot of Anishinaabe, not even just Anishinaabe, different tribes from everywhere because of the time that it was. A lot of First Nations people were aging out of Indian residential school at that time. My grandmother and my family being some of them. And they came over in 1967. What my grandmother did, some of my aunts and uncles were already here. They aged out a little bit before my grandmother did. I can't really get too much into the residential school they were in because we need a whole other segment for that. So I see the city kind of different ways. I grew up the same way. I eat coney. I like the Pistons. I like the Red Wings. We were a hockey family. Grew up in the 90s. Like everybody loved the Red Wings. So we grew up like that. But we also grew up with different vans coming to pick us up 2-3 times a week. That would say American Indian Services on it, American Indian Health and Family Services. So there was, we had a little bit of a different experience being, city natives, as they say.
Yeah, city natives, quote unquote city natives. And did you ever feel different because you were growing up in the city?
You know what? I personally, I didn't because my whole life has been here. It's not like I was living, half my life on the reservation and then had to come here as a teenager. I lived my whole life here. And then in Southwest Detroit, where I grew up at in the 90s, I was not the only Anishinaabe kid. So, we had a whole group of us, and a lot of the kids came from Wapu Island, Amjanong, which are all reservations just right over the border. Like Amjanong is maybe 45 minutes from here. You catch the ferry in Port Huron, and you end up in Bequejanong, which is Wapu Island. So a lot of those kids, had either ties here or came over here for whatever reason. They were living in Detroit. We even had, I grew up with a family that was from Lakudere, also known as LCO, and that's a reservation out in Wisconsin. So, Detroit was like a melting pot. My auntie Andrea White, she tells me back in the Red Ghetto days that at one point there was probably about 400 different tribes represented because, before then, back then in the Red Ghetto days, there wasn't federalization.
Yeah.
So everybody didn't have these different bands and tribes to go back home to.
Yeah.
That's all, deals through the federal government. So people were scattered in the cities, same way anybody else was looking for jobs. There was the Indian Relocation Act that would also, take natives from where their homeland, where they're from, and place them in the city settings and have them, learn trades to be, colonization to put them, So there was a lot of natives in the city. So me, I didn't necessarily feel different. We got picked up in the groups. All my friends are also, Anishinaabe growing up, at least for that period of time in my life. We went to the Michigan Indian Family Olympics in Mount Pleasant. We were making regalia as kids. We were, doing beadwork, and, we were always around native aunties, native uncles, letting us know, who we were. I remember as a kid getting picked up in that group. One time, I'll never forget it. I was wearing a Cleveland Indians hat because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I was a kid, and one of the uncles came over, and he kind of schooled me on that hat, and I was only like 10 or 11. But I had learned it, really young, and he wouldn't got me another hat.
Yeah. Yeah, I would assume, yes.
So we were around our people growing up, even in the city of Detroit.
Now, just listening to you talk about what it was like growing up in the city of Detroit, if we could just briefly, very briefly, because we're getting down to the end of time here, but if you could briefly just talk about, what you've seen change in terms of maybe even improvements or things that you think need to be improved on in the city, especially when we talk about just Native community relations.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's different worlds in this now. You have like the nonprofit sector, the nonprofit world, community, grassroots. I think it's a great thing. Heart Plaza Powwow came back. Big miigwetches, and shout out to the organizers that did that with the Detroit Indigenous Peoples Alliance, I believe. They did a really good job bringing that back. That was something that, there was so many people that day that came that used to live here 20, 30 years ago. And like, we were here when we were kids. Now I'm bringing my kid back to the Heart Plaza Powwow. So I think when I was a kid, it just seemed like there was so much going on. Also, I was younger. It maybe just felt that way. But there was 4 different nonprofits operating, which were our urban centers picking us up, programming, things like that. And when I created Vibes with the Tribes, I felt like that was kind of dying out.
Yeah.
One of the centers even closed because of COVID. And even then, that's different type of programming. You got nonprofit programming, then you got, music, arts, culture, building in that way. So, but what I do see is the city, trying, but they're trying now because they have no other choice, because our people here in Detroit, they're waking up, and whether it's food sovereignty, music, art, culture, traditional ways, we're here. And just the fact that maybe 5, 6, just to be safe, 7 years ago, nobody was saying Waawiyaatanong.
No.
Nobody was saying that. So when you go to Belle Isle now, there's this big picture frame thing where you can take a picture in front of, and on the bottom it says, Wanabeezy, which I still want to get the correct Anishinaabe words for that, like Swan Island. But it's still cool to see that people are eager to know about that history. I do think there's a lot of work for the city to do. There's no markers of anything that we were here. It's just like a big ghost town of native life, and there's statues of people and stuff everywhere. And there's, where's Ogima Bwandiak even? Where's our guy, our big famous guy? Where's Pontiac at, And it's, so there's always more to do, we're here, and, I would love to see, the Red Ghetto get acknowledged. I would love to see a Anishinaabe native district, even if it's a few blocks. Something that we can really share with the folks of Detroit.
I wish we had so much more time to chat with you both, but this is the end of our conversation. Charles Ezra Ferrell is an advisory board member as well as a director of Concert of Colors neighborhood programs. We have SouFy, who is a Native American hip-hop artist and community organizer. He co-founded Vibes with the Tribes. The Curved Shores Concert, a Native artist showcase, is happening this Saturday at Spotlight in Detroit. The show begins at 2 p.m. and is free and open to all. And as we leave, I want to leave with the artist here, Natasha Fisher. This is her song, You Promised. We'll be right back. This is The Metro.
Did you only need space to make room for someone else? Feel like there's always someone's voice inside your head.